A dog moment that shattered my marriage. A True Infidelity Story. My name is Erica, and I've always been passionate about capturing life's fleeting moments through my lens as a videographer. My husband Joshua and I have been married for 5 years, sharing a life filled with laughter, love, and our beloved dog Louis, a playful golden retriever. Our home is a cozy haven filled with the warmth of our companionship and the occasional chaos of Louis's toys scattered around. Joshua, an architect, has always been supportive of my career, often joining me on shoots when he can. Life seemed perfect, or at least that's what I thought, until one day a seemingly innocuous decision would change everything. It was during one of those rare moments when the house was eerily silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and Louis's gentle snoring. I was editing a wedding video, my fingers dancing over the keyboard, when my phone buzzed with a message. It was from Joshua, which was odd because he was supposed to be in a meeting. The message was simple. "Can you pick up my dry cleaning? Thanks, love." I remember feeling a twinge of annoyance, not because of the request, but because it was so out of character for him to forget something like that. But I shrugged it off, attributing it to the stress of his latest project. I grabbed my keys, called out to Louis to keep an eye on the house, and headed out. The dry cleaners was just a short drive away, but as I walked in, the air felt different, charged with an unspoken tension. The woman behind the counter, whose name tag read Lena, gave me a look that was a mix of sympathy and curiosity. She handed me Joshua's clothes, and as I turned to leave, she hesitated, then said, "You're Joshua's wife, right?" I nodded, puzzled by her tone. "Yes, I am. Is everything okay?" Lena's eyes darted around before she leaned in closer, her voice low. "I'm not one to gossip, but has Joshua mentioned a woman named Marissa?" The name struck a chord, but I couldn't place it. "No, he hasn't." "Who is she?" "She's been coming in with him for the past few weeks. They seem close." My heart skipped a beat, but I managed to keep my composure. "Thank you, Lena," I said, my voice steady, though inside a storm was brewing. Driving back home, my mind raced. Marissa. The name echoed in my thoughts, a discordant note in the symphony of our life. I tried to recall any mention of her, but there was nothing. Joshua had always been open about his colleagues, his projects, even the mundane details of his day. Why hadn't he mentioned her once home? I hung up his clothes, each movement deliberate, as if trying to piece together a puzzle. Louis, sensing my unease, nuzzled against my leg, his tail wagging hesitantly. I sat on the couch, the weight of suspicion settling in my chest. I decided to confront Joshua that evening, not with anger, but with the calm resolve of someone who needed answers. When he walked through the door, his usual smile didn't quite reach his eyes. He greeted Louis with a pat, then turned to me, his expression shifting when he saw my face. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Joshua, who is Marissa?" His face paled, a flicker of panic crossing his features before he composed himself. "Marissa. She's just a colleague from work." "Why do you ask?" The way he said just felt like a lie wrapped in truth. "Lena at the dry cleaners mentioned her. She said you've been coming in together." Joshua sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Erica, it's not what you think. Marissa is part of the team on the new project. We've been working late and sometimes we grab dinner or coffee. That's all. But the seed of doubt had already taken root, and you never thought to mention her. After all these years, you know how important honesty is to me." He sat beside me, his hand reaching for mine, but I pulled away. I didn't think it was significant. "I'm sorry, I should have told you." The silence that followed was thick with unspoken words. I wanted to believe him, to trust that our life together was as solid as it seemed. But the cracks were there, subtle, yet undeniable. That night I lay awake, the soft snoring of Louis beside me, my mind replaying every interaction, every late night Joshua had come home from work. The perfect life we had built seemed to teeter on the edge of a precipice, and I was left wondering if it was all just an illusion. But what happens when the perfect life starts to show cracks? It was a typical Saturday, the kind where the sun promises a day of adventure. Joshua was away at a conference, leaving me with a free weekend. I decided to take Louis to the park, a place where he could run free, and I could capture some footage for a new project. The park was bustling with families, joggers, and the usual weekend crowd. Louis was in his element, chasing after squirrels and playing fetch with me. As the day wore on, I found a secluded part of the park, a small grove surrounded by thick bushes offering privacy and peace. Here I set up my camera to record Louis's playful antics, planning to use the footage for a lighthearted video. But what was supposed to be a simple day out turned into something I never anticipated. As I was adjusting the camera angle, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from Joshua, which was strange because he was supposed to be in meetings all day. The message read, "Can you check if I left my charger at home? I can't find it here." I sighed, feeling a mix of annoyance and concern. It wasn't like him to forget something so essential. I replied, "I'll look when I get back. Enjoy your conference." Setting the phone aside, I returned my focus to Louis, who was now rolling in the grass, oblivious to the tension building within me. The sun was beginning to dip, casting long shadows across the grove, and the air was cooling with the approach of evening. I called Louis over, and he bounded towards me, his tongue lolling out in happiness. We started our walk back to the car, the path less crowded now as people headed home for dinner. My mind, however, was not on the peaceful scene around me, but on the conversation with Joshua the previous night. His explanation about Marissa felt rehearsed, too polished, like he was trying to convince himself as much as me. As we neared the parking lot, I noticed a familiar figure walking towards us. It was Marissa, her hair tied back, dressed in casual weekend attire. My heart skipped a beat, not out of fear, but from the sudden realization that she was here in this park on this day. She saw me before I could decide what to do. Her face registered surprise, then a forced smile. "Erica Wright, Joshua's wife." I nodded, my voice caught in my throat. "Yes, that's me." "And you're Marissa." She extended her hand, which I shook out of politeness. "Yes, I work with Joshua. Nice to finally meet you." The encounter felt staged, like we were actors in a play neither of us had rehearsed for. "What brings you here?" I managed to ask, my tone neutral. "Oh, just enjoying the day off," she replied, her eyes scanning the park as if looking for an escape. I wanted to ask more, to probe, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I said, "Well, it's a beautiful day for it. Enjoy." As she walked away, I felt a chill despite the warmth of the evening. The seed of doubt that had been planted was now sprouting, its tendrils wrapping around my thoughts. Why was she here? Was it just coincidence? Or was there more to this story? Louis, sensing my distraction, nudged my hand with his nose, pulling me back to the present. I looked down at him, his eyes full of trust and love, and felt a pang of guilt for letting my personal turmoil overshadow our day out. Driving home, the car was silent except for the soft hum of the engine. My mind replayed the brief encounter, analyzing every word, every gesture. Joshua's absence felt more pronounced now, the space between us growing with each unanswered question. Once home, I checked for the charger, finding it plugged into the wall in our bedroom. I sent a quick message to Joshua. "Found it. It's plugged in at home." His response was immediate. "Thanks, love. I'll pick it up later. Miss you." I stared at the screen, the words blurring. Did he miss me? Or was he just saying what he thought I wanted to hear? The trust that had been the foundation of our marriage felt like it was eroding grain by grain. That evening I sat in the living room, the lights low. Louis curled up beside me. The house was too quiet, too still, mirroring the calm before a storm. I knew I needed to confront Joshua again, but this time I wouldn't let it go with just an explanation. I needed the truth, the whole truth about Marissa, about his feelings about us. The night stretched on, and with each passing minute my resolve hardened. The perfect life we had built was at a crossroads, and I was determined to find out if it was all just an illusion or if there was still something worth saving. In this secluded spot with the camera rolling, Louis's playful energy was at its peak. He was jumping around, and in a moment of emotional breakdown, I found myself sobbing uncontrollably beside Louis, overwhelmed by my spiraling thoughts. The camera was still recording, but I wasn't paying attention. My thoughts were clouded by anxiety and emotional turmoil. It wasn't until I reviewed the footage later that the gravity of what had occurred hit me like a ton of bricks. The shock was palpable. I had crossed a line that was not only unethical, but also illegal. Watching the footage, I felt ashamed of how emotionally lost I had become, and I knew I needed help. How could I have let this happen? What would Joshua think? What would happen to our life together? The weight of my mistake was suffocating. Each breath I took felt like it was laced with the poison of my own doing. I remember sitting there, the camera still recording, my hands trembling as I rewound the footage. There I was on screen, collapsed on the grass in tears, clutching onto Lewis like he was my only lifeline. The reality of it was like a punch to the gut. My mind raced with the implications. If this video got out, my career, my reputation, everything I had built would crumble. And Joshua. Oh God. Joshua. How could I explain this to him? How could I even begin to justify my actions? I turned off the camera, my heart pounding in my chest. The silence of the grove, once peaceful, now felt like an accusation. I packed up quickly, my movements jerky and uncoordinated, driven by a need to escape the scene of my own downfall. Lewis, sensing my distress, followed me with a concerned look, his tail no longer wagging. Back at home, I locked myself in our bedroom, the door a barrier between me and the world. I sat on the edge of our bed, the one where Joshua and I had shared so many intimate moments, now tainted by my actions. I couldn't bear to look at the camera sitting innocuously on the dresser, its memory card holding my darkest secret. My phone buzzed, a message from Joshua. "How was your day with Lewis?" it read. The simplicity of his question, the normalcy of it, made me want to scream. I typed out a response, my fingers shaking. It was good. We had fun at the park. The life felt like acid on my tongue. The day stretched into evening, and with each passing hour, my anxiety grew. I couldn't eat, couldn't focus on anything but the video. I needed to destroy it, to erase what had happened, but part of me was paralyzed by the fear of what might happen if I did. What if someone else had seen? What if there was another copy? I decided to confront Joshua, not about Marissa this time, but about my own misdeeds. I needed his support, his understanding, even if it meant the end of us. When he came home, I could see the fatigue in his eyes, the strain of his conference. He greeted Lewis with a pat, then turned to me, his expression shifting when he saw my face. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern. I took a deep breath, studying myself. "Joshua, I need to tell you something. It's about today at the park." My voice broke, the words catching in my throat. He sat beside me, his hand reaching for mine, but I pulled away. "What happened, Erica?" The room felt like it was closing in. I did something terrible. Something I can't take back. I couldn't meet his eyes, the shame too overwhelming. "Tell me," he urged softly, his voice a mix of worry and confusion. I told him everything, the words spilling out in a torrent of guilt and fear. His face went from confusion to shock, then to a pained understanding. He didn't yell, didn't storm out. Instead, he sat there absorbing the weight of my confession. "We need to think about this, Erica," he finally said, his voice low. "We need to figure out what to do next." The real question was, what would I do with this damning evidence? The video was a ticking bomb, and I was the one who had to decide whether to defuse it or let it explode. The night stretched on, and with each passing minute, the decision loomed larger, more oppressive. My perfect life, once filled with love and laughter, now teetered on the edge of a precipice, and I was left wondering if it was all just an illusion, or if there was still something worth saving. The days following my confession were a blur. Sleep eluded me, food tasted like ash, and every time I looked at Louis, I was reminded of my betrayal. The footage from that day at the park was like a dark cloud hanging over me. I debated deleting it, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the need for self-punishment, or perhaps a subconscious desire to confess. Joshua returned from his conference, and his usual warmth felt like a spotlight on my guilt. I avoided him, claiming work stress, but inside I was crumbling. I started to isolate myself, spending more time at work, less at home, trying to escape my own mind. The house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison of my own making. Each morning I'd wake up with a heavy heart, the weight of my actions pressing down on me. Joshua would try to engage, his voice gentle. "Erica, we need to talk about this." But I'd brush him off, the words sticking in my throat. I couldn't bear to see the hurt in his eyes, the confusion, the betrayal. At work, I threw myself into projects editing footage until my eyes burned. The office was my refuge, a place where I could pretend everything was normal. But the moment I stepped back into our home, the reality hit me like a wave. Louis would greet me with his usual enthusiasm, his tail wagging, oblivious to the storm within me. His innocence made my guilt even more unbearable. One evening, as I sat alone in the living room, the silence was deafening. Joshua was out giving me space, or perhaps needing it himself. I pulled out my camera, the one that held the damning evidence. My fingers hovered over the delete button, but I couldn't bring myself to erase it. It was as if by keeping it, I was holding on to the last shred of control over my spiraling life. The next day, I decided to take Louis for a walk, hoping the fresh air might clear my mind. The park was quieter than usual, the usual laughter of children replaced by the soft rustle of leaves. Louis bounded ahead, his joy, a stark contrast to my inner turmoil. I sat on a bench watching him, my thoughts a tangled mess. A familiar figure approached. It was Marissa. She seemed surprised to see me, her smile tight. "I didn't expect to see you here again so soon." I managed a nod, my voice barely above a whisper. Just needed some air. She sat beside me, the space between us charged with unspoken questions. "How are things with Joshua?" she asked, her tone cautious. I looked away, my gaze fixed on Louis playing in the distance. "Complicated," I admitted. "Very complicated." Marissa's eyes softened. "I know it's not my place, but if you ever need to talk, I'm here." Her offer, genuine as it seemed, only deepened my sense of isolation. Here was a woman I suspected of being involved with my husband offering me solace. The irony was bitter. As she left, I felt a surge of anger, not at her, but at myself. How had I let things get this far? The video was a constant reminder, a silent accusation of my own moral lapse. Back at home, Joshua was waiting. His expression was one of concern mixed with resolve. "Erica, we can't keep avoiding this. We need to decide what to do." I nodded, the words finally coming. "I know. I'm sorry, Joshua. I've been so lost." He took my hand, his touch gentle. "I'm here, Erica. We'll figure this out together." The conversation that followed was painful, each word like pulling a splinter from a wound. We discussed the video, the implications, the potential fallout. Joshua suggested we consult a therapist, someone who could guide us through this mess. The idea of therapy was daunting, but I agreed. We needed help, a way to navigate the wreckage of our trust. That night I lay in bed, the room dark, except for the soft glow of the streetlights outside. Joshua's breathing was steady beside me, a stark contrast to my restless mind. I thought about the video, about Marissa, about the life we had built that now seemed so fragile. The real question was, what would I do with this damning evidence? The video was a ticking bomb, and I was the one who had to decide whether to defuse it or let it explode. Secrets have a way of surfacing, and mine was about to explode. One evening, Joshua, noticing my distress, insisted on watching some of my recent footage, thinking it might cheer me up. I tried to steer him away, but he was persistent. With a trembling hand, I played the video. The moment he saw it, his face went from confusion to horror. The silence that followed was deafening. Joshua stood up, his voice breaking as he asked, "What have you done, Erica?" The confrontation was inevitable, and the truth was out. I felt my heart sink as I watched his reaction. The video, which I never meant for anyone to see, revealed just how emotionally fractured I'd become. Joshua's eyes were wide, his face pale as he watched the footage of me and Louis in that secluded part of the park. I didn't mean for it to happen," I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. "It was a moment of insanity, Joshua. I was lost, confused." He turned away, pacing the room, his hands running through his hair in distress. "Erica, this is beyond anything I could have imagined. How could you let this happen?" Tears streamed down my face, the reality of my actions hitting me anew with each word he spoke. "I don't know." I was upset, overwhelmed with everything. I wasn't thinking clearly. Joshua stopped pacing and faced me, his eyes searching mine for an explanation, for some semblance of the woman he thought he knew. "And you thought hiding this from me was the answer? You should have talked to me, Erica. I shook my head, the weight of my guilt crushing me. No, it wasn't like that. It was a mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake. I wanted to erase it to pretend it never happened. He sat down heavily on the couch, his head in his hands. And you kept this from me. How long were you going to carry this secret? I didn't know how to tell you. I confessed, my voice breaking. I was scared, Joshua, scared of losing you, of what this would do to us. The room was thick with tension, the air heavy with the implications of my actions. Joshua finally looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. We need to figure out what to do next, Erica. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about Lewis, about our life together. I nodded, feeling the gravity of the situation. I know. I've already thought about deleting the video, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Maybe because I thought I deserved to be punished, or maybe because I needed to confess. Joshua took a deep breath, his gaze now distant. We need to talk to someone, Erica. A professional. We can't navigate this alone. The suggestion of therapy felt like a lifeline in the storm of my emotions. Yes, I agree. We need help. I need help. He reached out his hand, hesitant before taking mine. We'll go together. We'll face this together. But Erica, we need to understand the full extent of what's happened. Not just with Lua, but with us, with Marissa, with everything. The mention of Marissa brought a fresh wave of pain. I've been so caught up in my own guilt, I haven't even processed what might be happening with her. Joshua sighed, his expression pained. There's nothing happening with Marissa. She's just a colleague, but I should have been more open with you. I see now how my actions could have been misinterpreted. The conversation stretched into the night, each of us laying bare our fears, our mistakes, our hopes for what could be salvaged. The video was like a dark mirror reflecting not just my lapse in judgment, but the cracks in our relationship that had been there unnoticed for some time. As dawn broke, casting a soft light into our living room, Joshua and I made a pact. We would seek therapy not just for the incident with Lewis, but for the trust we needed to rebuild. We would confront our issues head-on together. But the fallout of this revelation was far from over. The video, still existing, was a constant reminder of my darkest moment. Joshua's trust in me was shattered, and the path to recovery was fraught with uncertainty. Would our marriage survive this betrayal? Could we ever look at Louis the same way again? And what would happen if the video ever got out? The questions hung over us, heavy as the morning fog outside our window. The next day, I called a therapist, setting up an appointment for us. Joshua was quiet, his usual warmth replaced by a cautious distance. We went through the motions of our day, but the undercurrent of tension was palpable. At work, I tried to focus on editing, but my mind kept drifting back to the video, to Joshua's face when he saw it. The office, once my sanctuary, now felt like a place of judgment, every colleague a potential critic of my actions. When evening came, Joshua was waiting at home, his expression one of determination mixed with sorrow. We need to talk about the video, Erica. We can't just ignore it. I nodded, feeling the weight of the decision before us. I know. I've been thinking about what to do with it. Maybe we should delete it, but part of me feels like we should keep it as a reminder of how far we can fall. He looked at me, his eyes searching. Keeping it might be a constant reminder, but it could also be a step towards healing. We need to decide together. The discussion was painful, each option fraught with its own set of consequences. We decided to keep the video for now under lock and key, a symbol of our commitment to face our issues head-on. That night, as we lay in bed, the silence was different. It was not the silence of avoidance, but of contemplation of two people trying to find their way back to each other through the darkness. The road ahead was uncertain, but we were on it together, bound by the love we still held, however strained, and the hope that perhaps, just perhaps, we could rebuild something beautiful from the ruins of our trust. The aftermath was devastating. Joshua moved out, unable to reconcile with what had happened. I was left with Lewis, who seemed oblivious to the storm he had unwittingly been part of. Therapy became my refuge, a place to understand my actions, to seek forgiveness for myself, and to learn how to move forward. The legal implications loomed over me, but I was determined to face them head-on. My life with Joshua was over. My journey towards understanding and perhaps redemption was just beginning. The days turned into weeks, each one a battle against the weight of my guilt. I started attending therapy sessions twice a week. Dr. Helen, my therapist, was a beacon of hope in the darkness. She had a way of listening that made me feel seen, understood, not judged. We delved into the roots of my actions, exploring the emotional turmoil that led to that fateful day in the park. I need to understand why I did what I did. I told her during one session, my voice barely above a whisper. It's like I was someone else, someone I didn't recognize. Dr. Helen nodded, her eyes kind yet probing. Sometimes when we're under extreme stress or emotional distress, we can act in ways that are out of character. It's not an excuse, but it's a part of understanding the complexity of human behavior. The sessions were grueling. I had to confront not only my actions, but also the underlying issues in my marriage, my insecurities, and the fear of losing Joshua. Each session left me drained yet slightly lighter, as if I was slowly unpacking the heavy suitcase of my emotions. Meanwhile, the legal implications were like a dark cloud. Joshua had suggested we consult a lawyer to understand the potential consequences of the video. We met with a family law attorney, Ms. Thompson, who was straightforward yet compassionate. The video, she began, her tone serious, poses significant risks. If it were to become public, it could lead to criminal charges, not to mention the social and professional repercussions for both of you. I felt my stomach churn. What are our options? Ms. Thompson leaned forward, her expression grave. You could delete the video, but that doesn't erase the act itself. There's also the option of keeping it under strict confidentiality, perhaps as part of your therapy process. However, if anyone else knows about this, or if it's ever discovered, you'll need to be prepared for the fallout. The decision to keep the video was agonizing. It was a stark reminder of my moment of weakness, a lesson in boundaries, and a testament to the complexity of human emotions. Joshua and I agreed it should remain as a private symbol of our commitment to heal, not as a weapon to be used against each other. Back at home, the silence was deafening. Louis, sensing the shift in our household, would often lay his head on my lap, his eyes full of concern. I would stroke his fur, whispering apologies he couldn't understand, seeking forgiveness from a creature who only knew love. Therapy continued, and with each session, I began to piece together a new version of myself. Dr. Helen helped me see that my actions were not just about that day, but were the culmination of years of unaddressed issues, of feeling overlooked, of the fear of losing Joshua to someone else. I need to forgive myself. I told her one day, the realization hitting me like a wave. I need to learn to live with what I've done, to make amends where I can, and to move forward. Yes, Erica, Dr. Helen responded. Forgiveness starts with understanding. You're on the path to that now. The legal consultations continued, and with each meeting, the reality of my situation became clearer. I was advised to prepare for any eventuality, including the possibility of legal action if the video ever surfaced. It was a sobering thought, but it also fueled my resolve to change, to be better. As for Joshua, our interactions were now limited, formal, and filled with a palpable sadness. We communicated mostly through lawyers or during our joint therapy sessions, where we tried to salvage what we could of our relationship, focusing on closure rather than reconciliation. One evening, as I sat alone in the living room, the house felt too big, too empty. I pulled out my camera, the one that held the damning evidence. My fingers hovered over the delete button, but I couldn't bring myself to erase it. It was as if by keeping it, I was holding on to the last shred of control over my spiraling life. The real question was, what would I do with this damning evidence? The video was a ticking bomb, and I was the one who had to decide whether to defuse it or let it explode. But will Erica ever find peace, or will this moment define her forever? Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed the story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.